I thought I was being smart. Every time my F-150 gave me a warning sign, I found a cheap workaround instead of fixing the actual problem. I topped off fluids instead of finding leaks. I cleared check engine lights instead of diagnosing codes. I convinced myself that weird noises were normal for a truck with miles on it. By the time everything came crashing down, I had spent $9,400 fixing problems that could have been prevented for less than $2,190. This is my story. Learn from my mistakes so you don't make the same ones. Warning number 1 happened at 70,000 miles. I checked my transmission fluid and it looked dark. Not bright red like it should be, more like a brownish color. I knew I should change it, but the truck was shifting fine. No slipping, no harsh engagement. Everything felt normal. I told myself I would get to it later. Later turned into never. By 90,000 miles, that dark fluid had turned almost black. The transmission started shifting a little rough between third and fourth gear. I ignored that too because it still drove. At 110,000 miles, my transmission went into limp mode on the highway. The check engine light came on. The truck barely moved. I had it towed to a shop. They pulled the pan and showed me the fluid. It looked like used motor oil. There were metal shavings stuck to the magnet. The filter was clogged. The valve body was damaged from running contaminated fluid for 40,000 miles. The shop quoted me $5,800 for a complete rebuild. That dark fluid I noticed at 70,000 miles should have been changed right then. A $300 fluid change turned into a $6,000 transmission rebuild. Warning number 2 started around 60,000 miles. I noticed some surface rust on my frame rails. Nothing major. Just a few spots where the factory coating had chipped off. I lived in the Midwest where they salt roads in winter. I knew I should get the frame treated, but I kept putting it off. The rust looked superficial. The frame still seemed solid when I tapped it with a hammer. I figured I would deal with it eventually. Over the next 3 years, that surface rust spread. Water got inside the boxed frame rails and started eating the steel from inside. By the time I finally took the truck to a shop for inspection, the rust had eaten through in several spots. The frame was not safe anymore. The shop told me I had 2 options: spend $2,000 on frame repair patches or trade the truck in for whatever I could get. I chose to repair it because I could not afford to replace the truck. That $2,000 repair could have been prevented with a $600 rust prevention treatment when I first noticed the surface rust. Warning number 3 was a check engine light that came on around 85,000 miles. I went to an auto parts store and they scanned it for free. The code was for a misfire in cylinder 3. I looked online and everyone said to try new spark plugs first. I changed all 6 plugs myself. It cost me $80. The light went off. Problem solved. Or so I thought. 3 months later, the light came back with the same code, cylinder 3 misfire. I cleared the code and kept driving. What I did not know was that the misfire was not caused by the spark plug. It was caused by carbon buildup on the intake valve. My F-150 has the first generation EcoBoost with direct injection only. Carbon had been accumulating on the valves for years. By the time I finally took it to a shop, the carbon was so bad that the engine had no power. It ran rough at idle. Fuel economy dropped from 18 miles per gallon to 13 miles per gallon. The shop charged me $500 for walnut blasting to clean the valves. If I had addressed the misfire correctly the first time, they could have caught the carbon early and cleaned it for $300. Instead, I spent $80 on plugs that did not fix anything, and then $500 later for the actual repair. Warning number 4 was an oil leak I noticed around 90,000 miles. It was not a huge leak, just a few drops on my garage floor after the truck sat overnight. I checked the oil level every week and topped it off when needed. A quart of oil cost $5, which felt way cheaper than taking the truck to a shop to find the leak. I convinced myself this was the economical solution. Just add oil when it gets low. No big deal. The leak was coming from the valve cover gasket. It was a $50 part and about an hour of labor to replace, maybe $150 total at a shop. But I did not fix it. I just kept adding oil. Over the next year, the small leak got worse. Oil was dripping onto the exhaust manifold, and it would smoke when the engine got hot. The smell was terrible. By the time I finally had it fixed, the leak had gotten so bad that I was adding a quart of oil every 500 miles. The valve cover gasket had deteriorated so much that the shop had to replace both valve covers, all the gaskets, and clean the oil residue off half of the engine. The total cost was $600. That is $450 more than it would have cost if I had fixed it when I first noticed the leak. Warning number 5 was a rattling noise from the front of the engine. It only happened on cold starts. The engine would rattle for about 3 seconds, then the noise would go away once oil pressure built up. I read online that this was normal for EcoBoost engines. Lots of people reported the same sound. I figured if it was common, it must be okay. The noise did not affect how the truck drove. It went away after warm-up. Why spend money fixing something that seemed normal? That rattle was my timing chain stretching. First-generation EcoBoost engines are known for timing chain problems. The chain stretches over time and causes that distinctive rattle on startup. If caught early, you can replace just the chain. Wait too long, and the stretched chain damages the guides and tensioners. By the time my chain finally jumped teeth at 115,000 miles, it had destroyed the timing system. The repair required removing the engine. That meant new timing chains, guides, tensioners, gears, and labor. The shop bill was $2,500. If I had replaced the chain when I first heard the rattle, it would have cost $800. Warning number 6 was a rough idle. Around 100,000 miles, my truck started idling rough when it was warm. The engine speed would fluctuate slightly. The whole truck would shake a little at stoplights. I blamed it on bad gas. I tried different gas stations, I added fuel system cleaner. Nothing really fixed it, but it was not bad enough to worry about. The truck still ran fine once I started driving. The rough idle was caused by a failing ignition coil. The coil was breaking down under heat. It would work fine when cold, but misfire when hot. That misfire was sending raw fuel into my catalytic converter. Over 6 months of driving with a bad coil, I destroyed both catalytic converters. When my truck finally failed emissions testing, I had to replace both catalytic converters and all 6 ignition coils. The repair cost was $1,500. A single coil costs $40. Replacing it immediately would have saved my catalytic converters and saved me over $1,000. Let's add up what my ignored warnings cost me. Transmission rebuild from running dark fluid too long, $5,800. Frame repair from neglected rust, $2,000. Intake valve carbon cleaning that I delayed, $500. Valve cover leak. I kept topping off instead of fixing, $600. Timing chain damage from ignoring the rattle, $2,500. Failed catalytic converters from a bad ignition coil, $1,500. Total damage, $9,400. Now let's look at what prevention would have cost. Transmission fluid change at 70,000 miles, $300. Frame rust prevention treatment at 60,000 miles, $600. Proper diagnosis and carbon cleaning when the misfire first appeared, $300. Valve cover gasket replacement when the leak started, $150. Timing chain replacement. When I first heard the rattle, $800. Single ignition coil replacement before it destroyed my catalytic converters, $40. Total prevention cost, $2,190. I spent $9,400 because I tried to save $2,190. I lost over $7,000 by being cheap. And that does not count the frustration, the breakdowns, the days without my truck while it was in the shop, or the stress of dealing with multiple failures. Every single one of these problems gave me clear warning signs. I saw them, I acknowledged them, then I chose to ignore them or find the cheapest band-aid solution. Here is what I should have done differently. When I saw dark transmission fluid, I should have changed it immediately. Dark fluid means contamination. Contamination causes wear. Wear leads to failure. A $300 fluid change prevents a $6,000 rebuild. This is not optional maintenance. It is insurance. When I noticed surface rust on my frame, I should have treated it right away. Rust never gets better on its own, it only spreads. $600 for professional rust prevention saves your frame. $2,000 frame repairs are what happens when you wait. If you live where they salt roads, rust prevention is not a luxury. It is mandatory. When my check engine light came on for a misfire, I should have paid for proper diagnosis. Throwing parts at a problem without understanding the cause wastes money. A $50 diagnostic scan at a real shop would have told me about the carbon buildup. Instead, I spent $80 on spark plugs that did not help, then $500 later for the actual fix. When I found an oil leak, I should have fixed the source immediately. Topping off oil is not maintenance, it is denial. A small leak becomes a big leak. A cheap repair becomes an expensive repair. Every single time. There are no exceptions to this rule. When my engine rattled on cold starts, I should have investigated immediately instead of trusting internet forums. Just because other people have the same problem does not mean it is normal. It means it is common. Common problems still need fixing. An $800 timing chain replacement beats a $2,500 engine teardown. When my truck idled rough, I should have checked the ignition system before my catalytic converters got destroyed. A bad coil costs $40. Catalytic converters cost over $1,000. You do the math. Ignoring symptoms does not make problems go away. It makes them more expensive. The lesson here is simple. Warning signs are your truck telling you something is wrong. Listen to them. Address them. Fix them before they cascade into bigger failures. Every problem I ignored got worse. Every cheap workaround cost me more in the long run. Every time I said I will deal with it later ended up costing me thousands. If your F-150 is giving you warning signs right now, do not make my mistakes. Dark fluid means change it. Rust spots mean treat them. Check engine lights mean diagnose them properly. Oil leaks mean fix the source. Strange noises mean investigate immediately. Rough running means find the cause. Your truck is talking to you. Listen before you end up spending $9,000 like I did.